Here's what you get with this episode of The Nice Guys on Business.
Most businesses are trapped in a myopic view of their product, and they haven't done the effort to figure out how to attach their product to the outcomes that people want in a clear way so that people can understand where their product kind of fits in. And I think that that's probably the biggest challenge.
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes? Well, I guess it's better than the Nice Guys on Business. Go from where you are now to where you could be. Get expert tips to grow your business, to be more productive and more efficient, whether you're trying to build influence, grow your community, or make it rain. Best-selling author of Nice Guys Finish First, Doug Sandler, can lead the way. The Nice Guys on Business is produced by Turnkey Podcast Productions. Now, here's your host, Doug Sandler.
So, Nice Guys community, if you're like me and you want to break out from being the best kept secret and share your message with the world, today we are going to find out the biggest reason internet business owners struggle and fail. And I'll tell you, Strick and I, we've been here plenty of times over the last 5 years since we've been building our Turnkey Podcast Production business. Well, Rich Schefren, he wrote the book on the key simple strategies to make more money, work smarter, and do what you love doing. He's the author of The Internet Business Manifesto. And if all of those answers to the secrets and making it big have kind of ended and you haven't really worked through that struggle, Rich is here to help us just kind of enlighten us, share a little bit more. And maybe, I'm always into good free coaching. So Rich, I appreciate you being here on The Nice Guys. You know, what I love about it most is that when both Michelle Schaefer and Joe Fear from Evergreen Profits had mentioned you, I said, okay, that's two sources within 2 days said, you got to have Rich on the show. So welcome here, man. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here, Doug.
And I love it when we first connected. I didn't recognize the bookshelves behind you, but you said, "Hey, you're in Baltimore, Maryland," and I grew up my entire life in Pikesville, with not just a hop, skip, and a jump from where you are right now. So love knowing that you're in my hometown, but much rather have you there than me there. So thanks for coming, man.
I can understand that. California is a lot more desirable than Baltimore.
Yeah, I'm a mile and a half from the Pacific Ocean. I always get a little bit kind of scared when it gets below 60 degrees here. I'm thinking, has the apocalypse reached us? So today it's a nice day. It's in the 60s, a little windy here, and I know it's probably wonderful in Baltimore as well.
Oh, sure, yes, it's beautiful.
So tell me, what's the biggest struggle that you usually find that people that are trying to not be the best kept secret, what do you think they're just struggling with? How do we break free of the chains of that secret state and get to be known on the internet when there's so much stuff that's out there?
Well, I think that, obviously it's very dependent on the business, right? And what is being sold at the end of the day, or what's being marketed. But one of the things that when I'm working with entrepreneurs, and we're talking about marketing specifically, one of the ways that I like to start that conversation, or kind of peel the layers away from that conversation, is that most entrepreneurs, they believe in what they sell, not because they sell it, but they sell it because they believe in it.
Right.
And if that's the case, they're generally talking to prospects who don't necessarily see the same need or haven't had the same experiences, so they haven't gone to that same conclusion. So one of the first ways to kind of think about marketing is that, you, the owner of the business, have had certain experiences that have led you to certain conclusions that your prospects don't have. And so one of the ways to start thinking about getting your market to think in line with you is to think about what has transpired that led you to that conclusion, so that you can then figure out a way to bring people to that same conclusion. So, like you mentioned the Internet Business Manifesto, that was really my way of doing that, of walking people through a bunch of strategies that, when you added it all up, you saw that this was a better approach to get an outcome, and it's the same belief that I had, right? So it's, another way to kind of think about it is that marketing is helping prospects value what it is you have to offer, right? So marketing is all about increasing the value, which generally deals with beliefs. and then selling comes later, when we're trying to move someone off status quo. So I'd start there, right?
All right.
And I guess you could lead me to however you want to take the
Well,
conversation.
it's curious because you've mentioned a couple of times in what you were saying, you mentioned the words marketing or the word marketing. And I think it's such a key issue that most people have. They love what they do and they know their products and services back and forth. Like I know podcast production probably as good or better than anybody that's out there doing podcast production. I don't know marketing as good as some key marketers that are out there. So we've oftentimes aligned ourselves with good marketers because
Mhm.
we know what we do, but our zone of genius is definitely not in marketing. So to put together a relationship with guys like Matt and Joe from Evergreen Profits or any
Sure.
other number of marketing tiers, that's the way to go. So is that a stumbling block for most people? They love and they know what they do, but they just don't know how to get the word out about what they do?
I would say that that's a common problem. What I would also say though is that the people that make the most money are the best marketers of the thing, not necessarily the best deliverer or producer of the thing. And so some amount of time should be spent on marketing, especially from the time coming from the person who's most knowledgeable about the product, service, what have you. And that's partly because like ideas will come on positioning and ideas, campaigns, for an expert that someone who is not an expert will not come up with. And that's not necessarily what like the expert topics. It's just that the expert can see the simplicity in it. And
Okay.
so, I've done that with other reports that I've written as far as um, making it um, making it clearer for people, where there's a disconnect between their prospects and what their beliefs are, right? And ultimately what the beliefs need to be in order to, support the product.
All right. So one of the things that you have been highly successful at is making that connection. So let's go back for just a second and let's go back and
Mhm.
talk about the reason why that you are the expert in this space. And here's a chance for you to really, and I know that from my conversations with others as I was doing some research on you, I know one of the things that you don't have is you don't have one of those sky high egos that's impossible to kind of say, hey, can you share what you've done to be successful without just giving me all ego? So now
Right.
can you share with me what you've done to be successful and help my community maybe make that connection for them and the products and services that they have and the market that they're trying to reach also? What have you done in order to get there?
Um, well, what I've done is I guess I'm starting from a position that's, I think, maybe a little different from people. So I think it starts from like my perspective, right? And my perspective is that like when I look at so let me give you a couple of just like operating perspectives I have that I think then influence how I market.
Sure.
The first thing is that I believe that reality is a lot more complicated than people think. That when it comes to cause and effect, we tend to have certain beliefs, but that reality is a lot more complicated than we often think, right? And so that's like a belief I have. And then another belief I have that's more just about a market, which I think everyone would agree with, is that market is just made up of a group of people who share a conflict, right? And the conflict could be a goal unattained or a problem unresolved.
Hmm.
And most people who are in the market did not join yesterday. So there's a group of people who have a conflict that they've had for some period of time. And I've always tried to come into a market with my own beliefs about how success can be achieved that would not be the common everyday wisdom of how success is achieved.
Can you
And
maybe share an example of that? Just so again,
yeah,
I want to
sure.
create.
So like, I wrote 7 free reports that really launched my business back in like 2006 to 2008. And the first one was the Internet Business Manifesto, and the last one was the Entrepreneurial Emergency. So the Internet Business Manifesto was written to the internet marketing space back in 2006, when no one cared anything about business; they only cared about marketing. And I came in and showed what happens when you only focus on marketing, and that paced with a lot of people's experience.
Right.
And so these were people who were internet marketers who were trying to make money online. That was the conflict. They weren't making enough in the amount of time that they were allocating or what have you. And so they had that, that was the conflict. And I came in and said, if that's the conflict, and gave a lot of proof and a bunch of content that showed that if you just focused on marketing, that was always going to be the problem, that you needed to understand marketing and business. And then
Right.
in the entrepreneurial emergency, which I used to sell a course on theory of constraints. So nobody in the market was looking for theory of constraints, but in the entrepreneurial emergency, I made the argument that what would determine your level of success more than any other thing is not what most people believe, which is their potential, but it's actually what is blocking them from tapping into their full potential, which is their constraint. And so the report set up this argument or belief, right, that what is between you and where you want to end up is what are constraints, not more, missing potential.
Right.
And then that creates a need then to figure out where your constraint is, right? So when I think of marketing, and I think that most people don't spend very much time on marketing, what I'm really thinking about is, how do I get my prospects to value what it is I offer? And what is it that I know that they don't know, that if they did know, they would value what it is I have to offer, right? And how can I introduce them to that, right?
Yeah.
And so that kind of starts the process, at least.
Yeah, what's cool about what you're saying is, and my partner and I always talk about this. It's that when somebody buys a drill, they're not looking for the drill; they're looking for the hole. So the solution to it, when we put that into our world, the podcast is not the podcast is a solution to a problem that somebody has. Nobody wakes up tomorrow and say, "I want to have a podcast." What they're probably thinking is, I think they're thinking is that I need a more effective, or maybe a higher tech way to promote my products and services. And maybe podcasting is the way to do that. We're not getting anywhere by promoting the podcast. We got to promote we have to really market to the problem. And we don't do that. We don't do that well. Apparently that is something that you understand, and you kind of were ahead of the curve when it came to, hey, let me explain to you where the problem is. You don't need a drill, you need a hole. So what do you think that most people are missing? Are they missing the marketing strategy? Are they missing that? They certainly aren't missing the product knowledge. They have a lot of that. Are they missing something in there?
Yeah, they're missing knowledge of their prospect, probably more so than anything else. It's like, I think it was Jay Abraham who once said this to me. Or maybe you wrote it. I don't remember. But
It's okay. You get a pass on a podcast. You get a pass.
Yeah. But it was that most entrepreneurs fall in love with the wrong thing. They fall in love with their business, or they fall in love with their product. But what they really need to fall in love with are their customers and prospects.
Right.
And one of the top three, or if not the one objection, that occurs very quickly, like when looking at an ad or anything like that, is a prospect saying, "This doesn't apply to me," right? The mental checkout. And so that's one of the most difficult obstacles to get over. And one of the easiest things to do to overcome that is to let the prospect know that you do understand them, you know what they're struggling with and where they're at. And when someone feels like understood, then they're much more open to hear how you can solve their problem. So I think I'd say most businesses are trapped in a myopic view of their product, and they haven't done the effort to figure out how to attach their product to the outcomes that people want, in a clear way, so that people can understand where their product kind of fits in. And I think that that's probably the biggest challenge.
Okay, and then once we get beyond, or at least let's just make an assumption here for a second. Let's assume that people understand how to market their products, or at least how to word their the solution to the problem that their potential market has, or that their market has. Now I'm looking at some stuff that is in some of the prelims information that Michelle sent over about you and some of the areas where you have your expertise. is that we're fighting
Mhm.
against the gatekeepers like Facebook and Google, who are silently working against us to keep us, keep our market from clicking on the things that they're actually
Sure.
interested in. So maybe help me with that stumbling block for a second, because now we've just made a big leap, and we said, okay, now I'm not going to focus on my products and services. I'm going to be able to focus on my marketing. And now beyond the marketing, we got to focus on the stumbling that we're having because there's some blocks in our way with some of the large players in the game. What are those blocks and how do we deal with them?
Yeah. So, I helped kind of help start this market, you could say, back in early 2000, and helped coach a lot of people who are, dominant forces in this market today, like Ryan Dice and Russell Brunson and Todd Brown and people like that. And then I left for a bunch of years, kind of took about 5 years off, and I still worked with Agora and a few other of my personal clients, private clients, but really kind of stopped marketing online. And then about 2 years ago, I started working with Agora closely because they were having a lot of problems with the platforms. And then when I started to see what was going on, it had me more concerned, not just for Agora, but for the whole market in general. And that's because these platforms like Google, like Facebook, Amazon, et cetera, really are mature businesses at this point.
Right.
They're not innovating anywhere near as much as they used to. And when a company becomes mature, it's much more about profitability than growth. And so where profitability is for most of these platforms is keeping their visitors on their own site. And so, most people I think have heard of like walled gardens. Well, Facebook's been a walled garden for a long time, but now Google's becoming a walled garden.
Right.
Most people don't know that more than 50% of the searches don't leave the Google page now, which, when Google
Did
first
not
started,
know
it was
that.
100% left. Yeah. And there's 95 million households that are members of Prime. It's more that will vote in like the election. It's more, um,
That's
and
scary. That
so
is
these
really scary.
platforms are, yeah, and these platforms are huge, and they break the law all the time, and get away with it. And that's, neither here nor there. But what the big challenge is that where their profit opportunities lie is oftentimes in conflict with the growth of small business. And so there have been less small businesses started year after year after year over the last like 2 decades. Less VC money is being invested now, like in any areas where big tech is. And so while the internet allows you to market, like, really the first time a small business could really market, it's now becoming more difficult again because of what these big platforms are now doing.
So how do we even fight that? I mean, it sounds like that's a battle that we're never going to win. If they're going to Facebook or any of the big, or Google or Amazon, I mean, you just named three huge players in the game. How do we ever get into that? As soon as they go to one of the biggest social media platform of Facebook, as
Right.
soon as they go to Facebook, it sounds like they're never coming out of Facebook, and unless Facebook's getting a
Well,
piece
they're
of it.
not, right? Yeah, they're not, unless you want to pay for that. And, you have to build a business model that can afford to pay for it. But what you can also do is take advantage of different strategies so that your business, one, is never reliant on any single platform. And then two, also really leverages the marketing tactics that are currently working right now from the people who have created those tactics, strategies, et cetera, right? Because in hand with the challenges is also that there's been a proliferation, right, of people who say that they're an expert who have answers when in
Right,
reality they don't.
right.
And it's like I can tell you how many times like I've seen my stuff like taught from someone to taught to someone who taught to someone who taught to someone like 5 stages down. It's different, but the origins of the idea. And so it's a difficult time, and it's become more difficult because people don't really know where to turn.
Okay, so talk to the entrepreneur that's out there right now that's hearing us have this conversation about marketing and then all of these gatekeepers. And instead of them throwing up their hands and saying, "Well, okay, I'm just never going to win at this," what should be important to them, or what are some of the things that they should be thinking about right now in order to get beyond what you're talking about? You mentioned something just a second ago, and I think it was key. It was something like I guess I already internalized it, the saying, okay, I need to own my own list. I have to have my own list. But so tell me about the things that we should be thinking about at this point, knowing what you know about technology, knowing what you know about the big gatekeepers, and knowing what you know about marketing.
All right. Well, yes. So you should definitely have your own list. You should also be moving people from one platform to another so you have the ability to reach them through multiple channels. In addition to that, you should obviously have their address, if you can get their phone number, all that stuff is valuable. In addition to that, you should be downloading your data from any of your ad accounts at least monthly, if not more often, because if you ever lose your accounts, you'll lose all the data. If you're advertising on Facebook and you do a lot of retargeting, then you should probably set up an additional ad account, which you're allowed to do, where you just put all of your lists. So whenever you're doing any kind of retargeting, you're putting one from the account you're using, but one from the master safe account, so that you never lose access to your lists. A big thing that I think a lot of people miss, and this is, when I wrote the free reports that really built my business, this was a focus point of mine. So I wrote, the Internet Business Manifesto, and then I wrote two more reports that kind of followed up on that concept of the manifestos. Then after that, I wrote two reports called the Attention Age Doctrine 1 and 2, and that was in 2007, I think, as well. And in the first one, the Attention Age Doctrine 1, I talked about how attention was going to become the scarcest commodity online. And then
Right.
Attention Age Doctrine 2, I talked about how attention was going to be going to social media and what were the implications of that. And one of the implications that I talked about that I don't know that most people really, that it clicked with, was that prospects now are not only a target, but they're your absolute best channel. And that's different than word of mouth or like customer referrals where you're dealing with your customers. I'm talking about your prospects. And one of the reasons why my business has always grown and why my reports were so profitable was that my prospects passed along my marketing material, because my marketing material wasn't overly aggressive when it came time to make the sale. It actually wasn't aggressive at all. It was more about building the beliefs that would support the desire for my product. So, so I'd say that arming your prospects with your message that makes people understand why your product exists and the benefits that can be had from it, extremely important, right? And so I would say that those are some of the things, but where I would say that, so there's really two issues here we're talking about. One is that most entrepreneurs and small businesses struggle because they're not good enough at marketing in general.
hmm
And then now it's become more difficult to market effectively, right? So there's these two things. So one, entrepreneurs have to understand how vital marketing is, right? That more and more the ability to create demand as opposed to just chase it, is going to make a difference. And then two, understanding that, with these mega platforms, there's always different strategies that can be leveraged, but you have to know who the right people are and you have to know what those right strategies are.
So let me be a little self-serving for a second, because I'm really curious to what your spin on this answer. But I'm thinking that there are many people in my community that are this way as well. Do we take the non-marketing people, the non-marketing businesses that are out there, the small businesses that less than a couple $1,000,000 a year doing their business, enjoying the business, but not knowing anything about marketing? Do I put my resources into hiring someone or figuring that stuff out as the business owner myself? Or do I put my skill set to use it, continuing to build my products and services, and hire a marketing company to do that for me? What would your best advice be to somebody that's an expert at this?
I would say that while and I tend to have answers like this when it comes to a lot of these kinds of things. So,
So your answer is going to be yes. I know. I know,
no, it's not that though.
right?
It's just what I would say is that um, that understanding marketing is critically important. Whether the owner does it or not is less important than understanding it. And understanding it is important because it gives you a purview of your entire business of what's going on. And you can judge whether what's being done is correct. I'm not talking about necessarily the intricacies of Facebook advertising or
Or
different
funnel making.
yeah, what I'm talking about is understanding like prospects and their mindset and you know what their ultimate goal is and what they believe will get them to that goal, and where do you fit in on that, and understanding that I think is incredibly important for any business owner, because um, if you understand that, that also guides you in product development. It guides you in a lot of areas. And so not understanding that, I think, is problematic. And I think that, um, yeah, I would say that it's not a skill that the business owner has to use, but it is a skill that they should have.
Well, being conscious is certainly much more profitable than being unconscious about it. Just to throw your
Sure.
hands up and saying, "Hey, I have no idea why I'm not moving. I have a great product, but I seem to be the best kept secret that's out there." Throwing your hands up and unconsciously and saying, "There's nothing I can do about it." I do know that marketing is our issue. We've talked about this for the last 2 years. We've
Hmm.
had a good steady stream of business come in the door, and that's great. But at the same time, it's like, okay, it's time to scale this to a much bigger level than we are right now. And I know there's many people in our community that feel the same way. You can get so far on your own, but once you get to that point, you need to have someone that's on your team that understands marketing. If you don't, or you need to have a partnership with companies that understand, or hire companies that do that. Just to throw your hands up in the air and say, "I just don't know," this is not a good way to approach it.
No,
So
it certainly isn't. And but it's also like it's understanding that you know, look, a great marketer might be able to pull out a great answer out of the hat. I mean, it's certainly possible. But what I would also say is that like understanding your business and understanding the products and having experience inside that business is going to arm you with knowledge that very few other people will have to be able to create marketing as effective.
correct.
So the while yeah, I've certainly had lots of marketers work for me and not necessarily doing all of the marketing, but I definitely had enough of an understanding of it, of what I wanted to happen, why I believed it would work, et cetera, that I could still oversee it.
So I know you put together an event that's coming up mid-February. If you're listening on the live broadcast or on the first replay of this in February, you'll be able to attend this, and I'll make sure that we put a link in the show notes for this. It's the Coalition to Save Internet Business, CSIB2020.com, and we'll make sure we put a link in the show notes, including our special code for that. But before we chat about that a little bit more in detail, I want you to
Sure.
just think about those guys and those women that have been in your life that that have been successful, including yourself, please, Rich, at being successful at providing this understanding of why marketing and solving problems. That's the approach to take to getting your business to not be the best kept secret that's out there. Is there one or two common elements between all of these people that that have been highly successful at marketing or understanding what marketing is? Something that's in common between all of them that you could share with our community?
From what standpoint? What are you looking for?
Well, I'm trying to figure out. You mentioned a handful of people that are going to be, and we'll talk about the event that
Right.
the online event. But you've put together this great event, and you have all these highly successful people. And I'm curious, what is it that makes these guys successful and women successful at doing what they do? If there is a common element in there somewhere.
There are definitely common elements. I would definitely say that, I mean, some of them are very like cliche-ish, right? There's confidence and those kinds of things. But outside of that, I would say that curiosity, um, more curious than most, and also curious, but also curious about like people and why they make the decisions they make, um, and uh, understanding, I guess, the underlying principles of direct response, which, yeah, I would say that if you don't if you don't understand basic direct response, I think you have a problem. And I
Okay.
think that everyone there understands direct response at a bare minimum. There's a lot of other things, a little bit of narcissism maybe, but I don't know that I want to like reveal all of those issues.
No, that's okay. Well, can we just expand upon direct response for a second? So
Sure.
somebody's hearing that answer and they're saying, okay, well, what does that mean? Direct response meaning that your market is saying something to you. Are you speaking? Are you engaging directly with them, or is it am I completely off target here?
Direct response is this type of advertising that is designed to stimulate a response. So, when I used to be in the clothing and music business, and when I was in the clothing and music business, we ran a lot of advertising, but the advertising was much more image driven. We weren't like, cut out this coupon and take it to the record store or anything like that. It was much more image and style. My next business, I opened a hypnosis center that grew into a chain of hypnosis centers. That type of advertising, which was to get people to pick up the phone and call and make an appointment, is direct response as
Got
opposed
it.
to institutional and image. And so direct response type of advertising, whether it's to get someone to opt in or whether it's to get someone to click on this button to go to the next page, these are all direct response. And so, style advertising, and that type of advertising is what online marketing is all about.
Absolutely, absolutely. We've launched many podcasts for those that are in the that are amazing at copywriting, and one of the things that they talk about is the idea behind I never really. Again, this is just goes a lot back to I'm a 55-year-old guy that didn't start before that started a business in entertainment before the internet ever came into my life, which was really about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, in 2013, 7 years ago now. And it is amazing the value that there is in good copywriting because
Sure.
it's an essential component. I sometimes read these emails and I'm like, no, and I just I'll just discard it and I'll read another one. I'm like, man, that's a really well worded. I mean, I focus on it now. It's like amazing to have a great copywriter on your team as well.
Yeah, I mean, especially if it's like coming up with a big idea or, when it comes to areas that can really move the needle. And it's like, so if do you guys sell podcasting? Is that like you sell podcasting as a service, like where you
Right,
teach
exactly.
people stuff like that?
Yep, we have a
Okay,
DIY and a full service concierge type of service.
gotcha. So, part of marketing is to figure out what you know about podcasting that the marketplace doesn't know. That if they did know, they might see podcasting as a more viable alternative, right? So, I had this client of mine, um, and his name was, I'm not going to say his name, but he wanted to be known as like the outsource guru, and he called himself the outsourcerer. Um, and um, and he was on a coaching call with me, and he was complaining that people just weren't interested in outsourcing.
Mhm.
At that time, this is like 2007, 8, 9, something like that. And at the very same time, the 4 Hour Work Week was the bestseller,
Right.
the number one New York Times bestseller. And what I was trying to say to this client of mine is that you're trying to sell outsourcing, but you're not marketing outsourcing. Tim Ferriss is marketing outsourcing because everyone wants the 4 Hour Work Week.
Right.
Not everyone knows whether they want outsourcing or not, right? So, everyone wants what podcasting can do for them,
Correct.
but they don't know necessarily that they want a podcast. And so part of
Exactly.
marketing is to get people to value podcasting more, right? So part of that is then sharing information so that people can connect the dots for themselves as to how podcasting might solve problems that they currently have that they didn't think podcasting would solve. And so that is starting like the marketing process.
Perfect. And well said. And that leads me into talk to me about a little bit about your event that you're putting together, and why the heck would you go 24 hours straight online, something like that. So tell me about your event and what's it all about.
Okay, so well, in general, whenever I do any kind of campaign, and I haven't done one in a long time, but because I took a bunch of years off, but whenever I've done one, I always try and I look at life or business as more of a series of sprints than a marathon. And I know a lot of people look at it as a marathon. So I always try and capture attention by doing something that, focuses attention. And so I did a 26-hour live stream back in 2008 during the election in October. We beat McCain that day. We had the most attended live stream that day. But that was 12 years ago. And I've done a bunch of other things of that type. This time, we're doing it, but we have a very clear reason for doing it. And that is that because there are so many experts out there that claim they are the one with the magic knowledge, and more often they aren't. And because of what's happening in big tech and how bad that is for small business, and the writing is on the wall about that, I reached out to a lot of what I believe are the world's best in every category. And that's why, like Russell Brunson, Ryan Dice, Todd Brown, Mike Dillard, Onyx Singal, James Von Elswick, like all the best at what they do in almost every area of online business. Neil Patel for search, right? John Lee Dumas on podcasting. Every expert who is really the best, sharing the strategies that are currently working today, like right now, so that everyone who gets on the live stream can actually take these strategies and start using them right now to grow their business and set themselves up for 2020 to be a great year. So we're starting at 7 p.m. on February 19th, and we're going till February 20th at 7 p.m. And we're doing that, one, because there's a lot of experts, and we want to make sure that we cover every area of the internet. Two, no matter where you are in the world, you'll be able to get on at some point in time, no matter, what your schedule is. And in addition to that, it's just highly, highly needed right now, because there are some strategies out there that are very effective, that most people don't know about. And these strategies help drop the cost per lead, the cost per acquisition. And so instead of only a few people finding out about that, and we want to make it more available. And so it's a free event. And when people register, actually, they get 3 presentations that I did last summer for free. I did a workshop this past summer for all the international publishers of Agora. And Agora is a $1.8 billion information publishing company that I've worked with for the last 20 or so years. And so I taught a workshop for 2 days to all the publishers. And the first 3 presentations, the first one was 13 ways to increase conversion rates without changing copy. The next one was increasing cart value and email sales, 11 sneaky ways to do that. And the third one was stealth selling, VSLs, webinars, and more. And so they get those presentations for free when they register for the live stream. And the live stream will be an epic event that I believe more people will. It'll be the biggest marketing event that's ever happened online.
That's great. Any ideas in terms of goals for how many people how many eyeballs you want to have on your live stream?
My goal is 500,000. I don't know if that's ambitious or not, but that's my goal.
Well, everybody wants to be a part of something highly successful, and I know just based upon the information that I got from both Michelle and Joe, and the information, the research that I've done, and as well as I can it's obvious to me in those that are in our community, Rich is the real deal. So what I would highly encourage you, go to csib2020.com, and then if you want to put in the code area, nice guys, you'll have a ticket to the live stream. And who are your lead off guests? I'm curious what your lineup is. Have you created the lineup? Are you working on it now?
They're working on it now. I know a few people have to get out earlier than others, so I think it's partly determined by that. Yeah. So, and then we have a bunch of people fly, international people as well. So we'll probably schedule them during like the peak hours of their time slot. So yeah, I would say that they're busy working on that right now, but it'll be a surprise to me.
Awesome. Are you going to be, how much of this is done virtually for you, or are you going to have is this literally a live table full of folks that are coming in for the live stream?
Yeah, no, everybody's flying in. This
Incredible.
This isn't a Zoom kind of thing. Everybody's going to be in the same room.
Excited for you having a live audience?
No live audience, because it's going to be based on just all the experts that are going to be there. There won't be any room.
Right. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I've signed up for I haven't signed up for the Nice Guys code yet, so I want to make sure I get credit for my code if I'm signing up. But I'll make sure csib2020.com, a Nice Guy community. Make sure you sign up for that as soon as you can. Again, the code is Nice Guys, all in lowercase, no spaces in there. And Rich, again, thanks for sharing. Thanks for your patience on getting here on the show. I know our schedule has been packed, but as soon as, again, some stick up my ass trying to figure out, okay, who is this Rich guy and why do people keep pushing him at me? I'm like, okay, I'll take him. I did a little research. I'm like, oh, why am I even arguing about this? Let's just move. Let's do it. So thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure, and thanks for having me, Doug.
Sure, my pleasure as well. Nice Guy community. Never underestimate the power of nice. Again, special thanks to Rich Schefren and all of his information, including access to the CSIB 2020 live stream event, will be right there in the show notes. Steve O'Brien, go ahead and take us out of here.
For the Nice Guys on Business, I'm Steve O'Brien. I would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for you meddling kids.